Hi everyone, here we are in Schenectady. I'll be your host today. I'm Mike Diana from the Schenectady County Historical Society. As always, my colleague behind the camera is Mary. Mary, how you doing?
Hey, good.
Well, it's good to see you all out here, and here we are, and as the title suggested, pretty soon I'm going to tell you why that small little bridge might just be the most controversial in Schenectady County, at least maybe in recent history, right? But before we talk about that, we do have to talk about a little bit about our history and where are we in the first place. This might not look like any part of Schenectady County you're familiar with, and indeed, this is a pretty quiet part of the county. In the town of Niskayuna, along this is Ferry Road, almost over the county line, almost into the town of Colony there. But this little road actually would have a very important part of Schenectady's history, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. All right, folks, so first let's talk about geography, because to understand this area and this Niska Island we'll be talking about, we have to understand how it came to be an island in the first place. You see, to my left, over that way, we have the mainland. That's Schenectady County proper. That's Rosendale Road that kind of runs alongside the Mohawk River through the town of Niskayuna. And then all the way on the other side is that Niska Island I was talking about, a small little spit of land which kind of juts out into the Mohawk River itself. Now, all this in the middle, well, this is kind of where the history comes in. You see, historically, this wouldn't be quite so flooded. It wouldn't be quite so wet here. When the first Europeans came to this area, they didn't see any wetlands here. What they saw was the outlet of the Lishkill Creek, or the Lishkill, which runs through Niskayuna and would dump out into the Mohawk. See it right behind me. That's where it would naturally just flow into the Mohawk River. You know, it's a small stream, so the mainland and the island would be pretty well connected together. You wouldn't think of it as an island back in the 1700s or the 1800s, even into the early 1900s. So what changed? Well, as you may know, in the early 20th century, or circa 1915 through 1917, New York State began to canalize the Mohawk River beyond. That is to say, they put up dams and locks throughout to raise the water level artificially. And what that did here is, as the water levels raised, they sort of backfilled into this lowland area between that high point of ground there and the high points on the mainland. And they turned the mouth of the Lishkill into something like a back bay, effectively isolating that little high point of land, which then became known as Niska Island. Is it really an island? Well, technically no. I think it is still technically connected to the land, but it kind of feels like an island. It is very isolated, and that's going to have some pretty important consequences later on in our story. But first, we're going to go to the end of Ferry Street and talk a little bit more about how this space would be used in the late 18th and early 19th century. So folks, here we are by the Mohawk River. We're at the end of that Ferry Road where you saw us earlier. Now, of course, Ferry Road, what does that name suggest to you? Well, just like most ferry roads, like the Ferry Street and the Stockade, this Ferry Road led you to a ferry, which would have been stationed here. And that ferry was first set up in 1790 by Eldert Vischer. Maybe that name sounds familiar. Maybe you're familiar with the little preserve just across the river there, known today as Vischer's Ferry. You can see that stone abutment just way across there. There's a parking lot there. That's the start of a beautiful walking path through the nature preserve. But you can imagine these would be the two terminuses of this ferry. We would have a line strung across the river, and a large barge-like vessel would be running along that line, steering with the current back and forth, ferrying people across the river.
Connecting people from the town of Niskayuna over to the town of Clifton Park.
Yeah, if you ever wanted to go to Clifton Park for any reason, am I right, fellas? Well, no. So this was really the only way to go, right? To my knowledge, your only other opportunity to get across the river, you'd have to go all the way back into Schenectady and cross the Burr Bridge in the early 19th century, or you'd probably have to go all the way over into Cohoes or Waterford. It's not too many opportunities to cross the Mohawk River. So this was a vital connection for a lot of people. And it made sense to have this road, you know, to connect all these things together. So as we're walking down Ferry Road here, it might not look like any place that you're familiar with in Schenectady, right? This doesn't really look like Schenectady County. This road's kind of forlorn and forgotten, you might say. There's kind of potholes here, there, and everywhere. There's dogs running wild. But no, nevertheless, this is just kind of the quiet, almost rural character that Niska Island preserves to this day. So today, there's only a relative handful of households actually on Niska Island. One of the more prominent ones you can see right here, that's the old Schoolcraft estate, which I believe was sold in 2012. So the most part of the north side of Niska Island is dominated by this farm here. You can see it from Google Maps. It is the Burger Farm, which sounds really tasty, right? A burger farm, but no, that's the family name. The Burger family have owned this land for generations. I do believe they still have a market stand on Route 7 where you can visit and maybe even buy some of the produce that comes right from here. You got to imagine this land is super fertile, being right next to the Mohawk River. It might flood periodically, enriching it and giving it that nice kind of fertile soil that you would need. All right, folks, so as the waters rose with the formation of the Mohawk Barge Canal, that left people on this newly created Niska Island in a little bit of a pickle, right? This had been private property for, centuries prior to that 1915 date. People had been living here. Again, this was an important hub in that ferry route. So this was private property. And now these people are being completely isolated from their mainland. Their homes are virtually inaccessible. So the state of New York, realizing that it's trapping all these people, it built a bridge to this newly formed Niska Island. Not this bridge that you see right now, right? The bridge they built in 1915 looked, well, quite a bit different, quite a bit more narrow and almost rickety, pretty precarious if you ask me. If we have some old photos of it, we might just splice them in here. However, that bridge is only gonna last for so long. In the 1980s, they did some repair work to it. They gave it a new deck, a new surface to, again, continue to carry people across into Niska Island. Again, just a handful of households there. But in the 2000s, that bridge was really starting to show its age, and it was really not sufficient for the needs of this community anymore. And it was structurally unsafe, really, was, I think, the issue, is that it was liable to fall down. And so begins the controversy, right? The town of Niskayuna didn't really know what to do because to replace the bridge, they knew would be expensive. We're talking millions and millions of dollars to build a road to, again, essentially just a handful of households out there on Niska Island. However, the alternative was to buy all those families out, to pay for their property so that they can, move off of Niska Island and find suitable accommodations somewhere else. And so the controversy is, what should we do here? Eventually it was determined that it would actually be cheaper. It would be cheaper to rebuild a new bridge rather than buy out all those properties there, like the Schoolcraft family, the Burger Farm. Apparently the land value of all that over there came in around $6 million, they estimated, and they figured they could build a new bridge for less. And so in 2009, that's exactly what they did. They built this thing that you can see right here. Right here, this is the new and modern bridge which services all those families, or those handful of families that still live on Niska Island. They estimated this price tag to be about $3.6 million. I think it ran over budget into the $4 million territory. Again, they don't run these reports by me. They probably should, but they don't.
Were you even alive in the 80s, though?
No, this was the 2000s. This was the 2000s. And I was, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I was alive in the 2000s. I'm a 90s baby. So they built this bridge. It cost a lot of money. You know, I'm sure the folks on the other side of Niska Island are very grateful for that, but it was controversial, right? Because that's a lot of money for just a few number of people who actually make use of that bridge. Now, this controversy, we're not gonna here take a stand one way or the other and say what the appropriate thing would have done. Should they have bought the families out and had them move somewhere else? Should they have built the bridge? That's not my question to answer here today, but it is something important to consider, right? Because this isn't really the end of the story. You can imagine this bridge is nice and new now, but eventually it'll get old. Eventually it will start to get unsafe. Eventually this bridge will have to be replaced too. Maybe that'll be in 50 years. Maybe that'll be in 100 years. I'm not an engineer. I have no idea. But eventually we'll have to make that decision again. Is it worth it to keep this bridge maintained, to keep Ferry Road intact so that those folks can continue to live on that beautiful little piece of land, or should something else be done? That's the question that I'll leave you with, and we can ponder it over the next 40, 50 years. We'll see what we come up with in that time. But for now, I've really enjoyed having this little conversation with you guys. Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for checking us out here in Schenectady County. Folks, this is the struggle we go through to bring you this quality content. I think this Odyssey Mary is taking right now is at least worth a like, possibly a subscription on our YouTube page, and the dismount.